right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about something called the New Scramble for Africa. And believe it or not, it's a story that ties the colonial history of the past to the green energy future we're all trying to build.
Okay, so look at the phone in your hand. Think about that electric car you might be seeing everywhere. Their very existence, their future, it all depends on a massive global power struggle that's heating up right now. And guess what? The epicenter is one single continent. But here's the thing, to really get what's happening today, we've got to go back in time. We need to rewind the clock to the late 1800s, to what historians call the first scramble for Africa. I mean, just look at these numbers. In 1870, European powers controlled only about 10% of Africa. But by 1914, almost 90%. That's not a slow takeover, that's a feeding frenzy. In less than a single lifetime, an entire continent was just carved up. The speed of it all is just mind-blowing. So you're probably asking, how on earth did that happen so fast? For a long time, European influence was just these little dots on the map, mostly coastal trading posts. But then came the Berlin Conference in 1884. You can think of it as the starting gun being fired for a mad dash to claim territory. And boom, by the time World War I rolled around, the map of Africa had been completely redrawn. So why the sudden rush? Well, it was kind of like a perfect storm. First, you had the Industrial Revolution, which was incredibly hungry for raw materials. Then, you had this intense rivalry between European nations. Having colonies was like a status symbol. Plus, controlling strategic spots like the Suez Canal was a huge deal for trade. And the excuse they used for all of this? This really paternalistic idea of a civilizing mission to spread their culture. Okay, so claiming all that land is one thing, but how do you actually control it? The European powers had different playbooks. The British, for instance, often used what's called indirect rule. Basically, they kept local chiefs and rulers in place, but made them work for the colonial government. The French, on the other hand, usually went for direct rule. They just kicked out the local government and put their own people in charge. Two different strategies, but the end goal was exactly the same: total control. And this right here, this is really the heart of the matter. You've got 14 European nations and the US sitting around a table in Berlin, literally drawing lines on a map of a continent most of them had never even been to. They came up with this rule called effective occupation, which basically meant if you can plant your flag and control the area, it's yours. But the most outrageous part, guess who wasn't invited to the party? Not a single African representative. Their homes, their futures, were being decided for them, and they had absolutely zero say in it. All right, now let's hit the fast forward button and come all the way back to today. The world is facing a completely different kind of challenge now, right? Climate change. And our race to build a cleaner, greener future has kicked off a brand new and incredibly intense global demand for something else. So we're all trying to make this massive shift, right? Moving away from fossil fuels that have powered everything for centuries and moving towards clean, renewable energy. But there's a catch. And it's a big one. This green future we want, it's not built on thin air. It's built on metal, a lot of it. We're talking about all the stuff inside EV batteries, solar panels, and those giant wind turbines. They all need massive amounts of what are called critical minerals. And when I say massive, I mean it. Get this, the Mo Ibrahim Foundation crunched the numbers, and to hit our global climate targets, the world needs to produce almost 500% more of minerals like cobalt and graphite by the year 2050. Let that sink in. A 5-fold increase in just a couple of decades. That is a truly staggering amount.
So the big question is, where in the world are we going to get all these minerals from? And just like it was back in the 19th century, all eyes are once again turning to one place: Africa.
And the concentration of these resources is just wow. Let's take cobalt. It's in the battery of the phone you're probably holding and in every single electric car. More than 70% of the entire world's supply comes from just one country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's insane. Or how about platinum? It's super important for making green hydrogen, which many think is the future clean fuel for things like big trucks and factories. Well, a whopping 90% of the world's known reserves are sitting in South Africa, a near monopoly. And the list just keeps going. Guinea, it's got almost a quarter of the world's bauxite, which you need for aluminum. Mozambique, one of the top 3 places for graphite, which you need for batteries. The copper belt in Zambia and the DRC, that's over 12% of global production. Zimbabwe, a top exporter of chromium for wind turbines. You see the pattern here?
The continent is, without a doubt, a geological superpower for this new green era. And as you can imagine, this has kicked off a huge competition. The Mo Ibrahim Foundation puts it perfectly. You've got global powers, the US, Europe, China, all basically scrambling over each other to lock down these materials. It puts Africa right at the very center of this whole green energy transition.
But here's where we see a really familiar and kind of worrying pattern emerge. Let's go back to cobalt. Over 70% of it is mined in the DRC, right? But then over 60% of that raw cobalt gets shipped off to China to be processed and refined. So what does that mean? It means the dirty, difficult work of digging it out of the ground happens in Africa, but the more profitable, higher-skilled work of turning it into a valuable product happens somewhere else. This is that value chain gap, and it's a huge problem. I mean, this is all starting to sound pretty familiar, isn't it? A big rush for resources, global powers competing, and wealth flowing out of the continent. But a lot of people are asking a really important question. Does it have to be this way? Could this time actually be different? Is this a chance for African nations to flip the script and break those old patterns?
There's a key word you need to know, and it's beneficiation. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually super simple and powerful. Instead of just digging up raw ore and shipping it away, you process it right there, in the country where it was mined. You turn the rocks into refined metals, the bauxite into aluminum. Why? Because that's where the real money is. It means more jobs, more skills, and more wealth stay right there on the continent.
So what's the game plan to make this happen? Well, there are a few big steps. First, you've got to build those local value chains. We're already seeing it happen, like the deal between the DRC and Zambia to make batteries together. Second, countries need to trade more with each other, using things like the new African Continental Free Trade Area. And third, and this might be the toughest part, you need really strong, transparent governance to make sure the money from all these minerals actually helps everybody and doesn't just disappear into the pockets of a few.
So at the end of the day, it's pretty simple. The road to a green future for the entire planet runs straight through Africa. There's no way around it. The only question is, on whose terms is that future going to be built?
So what's it going to be? A real partnership to build a better, cleaner world for everyone? Or is this just Gold Rush 2.0, a repeat of the same old story? Ultimately, the answer really comes down to one thing. Who gets to hold the power? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for